Across planet internet, self-appointed scientists are filming themselves in action. These internet heroes are doing bizarre experiments, making extraordinary inventions, and creating amazing scientific stunts. We're gathering a team of top science brains to analyze just how they do it, why they do it, and choose the very best. It's science, but not as you know it. So don't even think about trying this at home. In this episode, we celebrate online individuals with spectacular savage skills. From the stunning to the stylish, these titans of talent have reached the top, thanks to their extreme expertise.
To make it into Savage Skills, you gotta show me skills I've never seen before.
Dang. You've got to use unbelievable skills to become an ultimate legend.
I want to see talent taken to the next level. Level savage.
The scientists have spoken, so take a seat as we start our countdown with a super speedy sportsman. Meet Lewis, a sports trainer with some seriously fast feet.
Now these are some savage skills.
I'm impressed, Lewis.
You should be, Hakeem. Lewis is moving his lightning-fast legs at nearly double the speed of an average person.
I'd love to see this in slow-mo.
Well, here you go, Matt. And to take a look at this savage skill, we're running with Lewis in Miami.
I started training nearly 4 years ago. I just wanted to get in shape. I wanted to shed, a few pounds. I noticed my success with my kind of training in just a few weeks. I was getting faster, I was getting quicker, and I just wanted to keep going.
So, how does Lewis move so quickly?
Running like this is actually a very complicated movement. The secret lies in patterns of nerves in a spinal cord called central pattern generators.
These networks control the strength and timing of muscle contractions that generate the rhythmic movements of each limb.
Luis has been practicing this for years, using the same neural connections each time. This reinforces the pathways and connections within his spinal network.
Lewis also has biology and genetics on his side. Everybody has both fast twitch and slow twitch muscles. Slow twitch muscles use oxygen, and they're good for doing slow movements over a long period of time, like running a marathon.
Fast twitch muscles contract, can you guess? Quickly, and so they're good for rapid movements like these. It's likely that Luis has a higher proportion of fast twitch to slow twitch muscles than most of us.
Lewis has had to put in hours and hours of training to develop the strength and the stamina to run as quickly as he does in this clip.
On top of all this, Lewis keeps his torso really still, and that's to keep his center of mass, or his average position of his mass, directly above the point of contact. This helps him with balance and, of course, with speed.
Lewis definitely deserves a place on our savage skills list, and it's not just us who think so.
The reaction people get when they see my skills live in person, they just don't believe what they see. Some of them ask me, hey, can we record what you're doing because it's just a blur. We don't believe it's humanly possible to move that fast. It's awesome. It's awesome for that to happen to me every time I do my fast feet stuff, so it's cool.
For his fast feet, we give Luis our stomp of approval.
In Brazil, 149 skill seekers are about to take a giant leap from a 98-foot-high bridge and set a new world record.
This is ludicrous.
Okay, nothing about this looks safe.
Yes, this epic jump took months of practice and some serious science know-how.
This is astounding.
So how do these super swingers not crash into each other?
All in, this stunt is using miles of nylon cord, very similar to what you would have on a clothesline.
Using a nylon rope makes the physics very different from that of a bungee cord because the nylon rope doesn't stretch and absorb energy the way the bungee cord does.
To get around this, they have attached their ropes to the far side of the bridge, which means when they start falling, they actually swing like a pendulum.
The great thing about a pendulum is that unless it's disturbed, it will just swing backwards and forwards in the same plane. This means if everyone jumps out straight, they will swing backwards and forwards perfectly next to the people on either side without crashing into them.
Leaving these guys hanging, we're staying in Brazil. Okay, joke time. Have you heard the one about a guy who walked into a bar and did a backflip? Well, you have now.
Oh my gosh, did he seriously just do a backflip with a cup of beer in his hand?
This guy can sure hold his beer.
I know who my new wingman is.
How does this dude not topple his tipple? Let's look at the science.
This only works because the guy makes sure his hand follows an arc through the air.
As he's doing the backflip, his arm is rotating around in a circle, providing a centripetal force that keeps the drink moving around. And that way, the drink experiences a centrifugal effect.
The drink inside the cup has inertia, which means it doesn't want to carry on round this circular path. It wants to head off in a straight line all the time.
That means that at every point around the circle, the drink wants to keep moving in the direction it was moving right before it. So it wants to leave the circle in a straightforward motion.
But the drink is inside the cup, so rather than leaving the circle, it pushes on the base. That means it counteracts the effect of gravity and stays safely contained.
What a great party trick. I'll be sure to try it next time I'm out.
Now for a clip that's totally gonna float your boat.
Ease up.
How is this even possible?
Still going.
To make a boat go upright, that's what I call a savage skill.
In Minocqua, Wisconsin, Mark Ritter is taking powerboating to a new and totally savage level.
This is literally showboating.
So how does Mark get his boat to stand at attention? Scientists, rise up.
The boat is fitted with two heavy and powerful engines right at the back.
Each engine has a mass of 490 pounds or 220 kilograms, whereas the boat on its own has a mass of 2,200 pounds or 1,000 kilograms.
This means the boat's centre of mass is shifted really far back. Mark has tilted the engines so the propellers are just under the surface and pointing upwards at a really steep angle.
When Mark turns the engines on, the propellers produce a force against the water. Thanks to Newton's third law, an equal and opposite force is also produced, which pushes the propellers down into the water.
This generates a turning force around the boat's centre of mass. Because the centre of mass is so far back, it lifts the front of the boat really high in the air.
Ease up. Mark has combined all those rules to absolutely nail this wheelie. Or keelie.
At number 16, it's time to get patriotic with a feathered friend. Meet Joku, a 3-year-old chicken who has over 5 million online fans, thanks to her piano playing skills.
Unreal.
Now this is what I call flock and roll.
Yes, Joku is top of the pecking order when it comes to piano playing.
Good girl, Joku.
We flocked to Maryland to meet Joku's musical mentors, Shannon and Sehi.
We have probably taught her about 8 songs. About 8 songs.
8 or 10.
Yeah. I think The America the Beautiful is probably her favorite because she has
definitely her favorite.
It is definitely her favorite.
Yeah.
She was a real quick study. I believe that it took her a couple of weeks to learn how to play a song, straight through. It was pretty incredible.
How does this bright bird play the piano?
Joku the chicken doesn't really know how to play the song America the Beautiful, but she does know how to peck keys that light up, and then a background track fills in the rest of the song as she proceeds.
Joku's owners taught her how to do this by using a training system called operant conditioning, where a reward is given every time a subject does something in the right way. Every time Joku does a specific behavior, in this case, pecking a certain piano key, she's given a food reward, a mealworm. But it's associated with a neutral stimulus, the clicker, and it means that Joku's brain learns to associate the sound of the clicker with a positive reward.
By increasing the time between the click and the reward, they were eventually able to train Joku to play an entire piece of music without a reward. Except, of course, for the reward that comes from the satisfaction of knowing you've played a piece of patriotic music well.
Joku can also see and react very quickly to the lights on the piano because chickens have very well developed eyesight. They have 5 kinds of light receptors in their eyes, compared to humans that have only 2. And this allows them to detect various levels of color and motion.
Good girl, Joku!
She is very special, and these chickens are like our children.
Well, we embodied the whole crazy chicken lady thing for sure. Yes.
Previously, we've seen chemistry student Drake Anthony use lasers to burn boxes and burst balloons. But now, he's using his building skills to create a laser that does this.
Oh, that's nuts.
For something homemade, this is incredibly powerful.
I had no idea a laser could do that. That's awesome.
Yes, this dangerous laser is 2.6 million times more powerful than a regular laser pen. So how has Anthony built a glass blasting laser?
Within the laser, there's a cylindrical rod of ruby crystal, and wrapped around it, there's a flash lamp, just like the flash in the camera, only many times stronger.
Once Drake flips a switch, it lights up instantly.
The light shining into the ruby causes electrons to jump up to a higher energy state. As they fall back down, they release a photon of light.
The photons inside the ruby crystal bounce back and forth at 1 billion times per second, building up more and more energy. All this energy is eventually released in the form of a massively powerful laser pulse. This light energy then hits a lens which Drake has positioned there to focus the laser beam.
The beam is so intense and focused that it causes the part of the glass that it hits to heat up rapidly, and that causes that glass to expand. The surrounding glass remains cool, and it's those stresses that cause the glass to shatter.
You know, with so many cars on the roads, inner city parking can be a real nightmare. And if you think this guy's going nowhere, he's got some savage driving skills on his side.
Did that actually happen?
This would be really useful at work when I got blocked in.
This is the definition of getting out of a tight spot.
These military police officers in Brazil are practicing an emergency maneuver. But how does this tactical tire trick work?
In this clip, a car is boxed in with cones positioned mere inches from the front and back bumpers. But the driver is able to escape this trap without even hitting the cones.
To pull this off, the car needs to be front-wheel drive with a parking brake that locks the rear tires. It also helps if it has a manual gearbox, which means it'll have a clutch.
First, they need to turn the tires all the way to the left. Next, they need to apply the handbrake. After that, they push in the clutch, which disengages the engine. Then they put the car into first gear and start revving the engine.
With the car now revved up, the clutch is released, and now the engine engages the front wheels, and the front wheels start to spin with maximum power.
But the rear brake is now holding the back of the car, which doesn't allow it to move forward, so it pulls it to the left, and then they release the rear brake, and the car drives out.
This looks like it might be fun to try at home, but please don't do so. you can do a lot of damage to your tires and actually make your car not very safe to drive.
At 13, we're hitting the Austrian slopes with the incredible Jonas Hoffmann. So incredible, in fact, he's skiing on the tips of his skis.
This looks completely impossible. This must be fake. How does he do that?
I struggle to ski forward, so this is amazing.
Skiing backwards on the tips of your skis, that's a savage skill.
Well said, Saad. But how is Jonas able to go backwards on the tips of his skis?
To pull off this stunt, he must master stability. He must keep his centre of mass, which is the average position of his mass, over the ski's contact point with the snow.
He's using a clever technique where he's crossed the back of his skis over. This forms a more stable platform, allowing him to lift his body up and down and keep his centre of mass above the contact point.
He needs to get his balance perfect to stop himself from falling face first into the snow. As he moves down, he encounters small bumps. This moves his center of mass out of position, so he constantly adjusts himself to make sure he stays balanced. He does this by moving his arms in different positions.
The crossed skis also helps by keeping his speed at a nice, controllable rate. It means the skis are on an angle and they're pushing out, slowing him down.
That is impressive.
He's also using freestyle skis, which are more flexible than normal skis. This makes it easier for him to move his body around and stay balanced, and increases the size of the contact point that he has to keep his center of mass above.
When it comes to skiing, Jonas is tip-tops. Welcome back to Savage Skills, where our countdown takes a plunge into number 12. We've seen all sorts of madcap underwater antics. From aqua egg cracking to plectrum plucking in a pool. But in Japan, diver Hiroyuki Nasu proves he can blow rings around all of them.
He shoots, he scores!
Savage subaquatic skills.
This guy has managed to topple a tower of rocks that are underwater using only his breath. Amazing.
How does Hiroyuki create breathtaking bubbles?
This donut-shaped ring is called a toroidal vortex, and he makes it by pushing a spherical bubble of air out of his mouth.
When that bubble hits the stationary water, there's a lot of drag on the air on the outside of the bubble, but the air on the inside continues to go forward quite quickly. This sets up a system where the air on the outside is being slowed down, on the inside going fast forward. And you get a rotating vortex in the shape of a ring.
The diver makes a more effective vortex by pulling their hands apart very quickly. This has the action of pulling more water into the center of the vortex, which drives it forward at a faster speed.
When this moving, spinning system of air and water hits the tower of rocks, the sudden currents of waters disturb the rocks, which were precariously balanced, and they topple over in a dramatic fashion.
Great job, Hiroyuki. You've blown us all away. And now for something you've never seen before. No, it's not these guys doing parkour. That's so 2006. But have you ever seen a free-running squirrel? Well, now you have.
This is nuts. Walnuts.
This urban red squirrel is scaling to new heights of savage skillfulness.
It's like a ninja squirrel. How is this squirrel doing this?
Well, let's find out.
This red squirrel is traversing a vertical wall and making it look easy.
The squirrel can do this because its body is well adapted for climbing vertical surfaces.
They have to get to the tops of trees to look for food and to build their nests out of the way of predators.
The squirrel has hook-like claws at the end of its flexible fingers and toes, and it's these claws that allow them to dig deep into the surface and provide steady anchor points for climbing.
Its highly mobile joint between the ankle bone and heel bone can rotate almost 180 degrees, allowing the squirrel to turn its foot in whatever direction it needs to be able to climb.
The squirrel also uses its bushy tail, which is as long as the body itself, for balance and to keep its center of mass, or the average position of its mass, close to the wall.
These adaptations allow the squirrel to scale this vertical surface easily. It also helps that the building isn't smooth. The walls have a rough finish, giving the squirrel little grooves to cling to the same way it would climb up a tree trunk.
Squirrels hardly fall off these surfaces, but if they do, they can survive falls of 40 feet or 12 meters because of their light bodies.
You have to wonder how they tested that. 41 feet. That's a no.
Hey, thanks, buddy. So far, our Einsteins of the extreme have impressed us with skiing on tips, beer drinking flips, and incredible boating tricks.
Unreal.
But at number 10, we're in Texas for a totally savage stunt. 5,000 feet up, professional skydiver Jeff Provenzano is parachuting onto a jet ski, way down below.
He is dropping way fast. This is really scary.
Touchdown!
I love everything about this.
This epic leap from sky to jet ski safely lands Jeff a place in our countdown. But how does he complete this skillful stunt?
This clip is insane. Jeff is using a technique known as swooping. When he jumps out of the plane, he immediately enters a corkscrew turn, descending toward the ground incredibly quickly. He reaches speeds of up to 80 miles an hour or 130 kilometers an hour.
Pulling out of the corkscrew, Jeff has enough speed to catch up with the jet ski that's racing at 35 miles per hour or 56 kilometers per hour. The horizontal speed gives him lift, allowing him to maintain a level flight just above the water.
Up until that point, everything Jeff has done is hard, but the landing is the hardest part. He has to be able to pull the flaps at the right time, brake, drop, land on that jet ski.
This is really hard and it takes a lot of skill, but Jeff has thousands of jumps under his belt, and that's why he's able to nail it.
And it's not just Jeff's skills that help him with his stunt.
Jeff's parachute is tiny by parachuting standards, only 78 square feet or 7.2 square meters. This means that it's both fast and maneuverable.
Jeff's canopy is a ram air parachute, which acts like a wing. So instead of just being confined to moving downwards, he can glide around however he wants.
That's a savage skill!
Welcome back to Savage Skills. We're at number 9, we're heading to the woods. Ah, the great Canadian outdoors. Home to black bears, majestic moose, extreme off-road inline skating, emerald green forests, and... Wait, what was that last one?
I like how this guy rolls.
Showing off some impressive skills on wheels, Dustin Werbeski has taken inline skating out of the parks and into the woods.
I nearly sprained my ankles just watching this.
We're in Vancouver to meet this thrill-seeking wonder on wheels.
With inline skating on the streets and inline skating in the mountains, it's the same game, but totally different. Here on the mountain, second you drop in, you gotta be focused, precise, paying attention to every little detail. Every little rock, pocket, root, whatever it may be.
How is Dustin able to inline skate off-road?
Dirt tracks are much harder to skate on than asphalt because they're covered in little chunks of rock which can move easily and get trapped under the wheels, throwing the skater off balance.
Normal inline skates have hard wheels with zero suspension, so they bounce and bop around any little bump in the road. They simply wouldn't work for this. So Dustin has some special inline skates.
The main difference is that the street skate uses a urethane wheel, whereas these use an air-filled tire.
In addition to that, the wheels are made a lot bigger in diameter, which means they can roll off little bumps on the road much more easily. He also needs to bend his legs. That way his thighs absorb any little shock, and that way he can keep balanced.
With the help of special skates and a lot of skill, Dustin can overcome this tough terrain and really nail that off-road skating.
From the first time I've done it till the end of doing it, the second you drop in, it's adrenaline, definitely scary, intimidating, but pure pleasure.
And if you're thinking of trying this out for yourself, remember to always wear protective gear, because you just never know when something bad might happen. See what I mean? We're in Norway, where parkour enthusiast Ole Johnson is attempting to climb a ladder without the help of a wall.
This guy is amazing. I have never seen anybody do that.
Competitive ladder climbing is not an easy sport to get into. You gotta start at the bottom and then work your way to the top.
How is Ole able to climb an unsupported ladder?
This is a battle for balance as soon as he takes his first steps. He has to make sure his center of mass, which is the average position of all his mass, is always right over the base of the ladder.
The closer an object's center of mass is to the ground, the more stable it is. So the higher he climbs on the ladder, the more unstable the ladder becomes. So this trick gets harder and harder.
As he climbs, the ladder can't stay perfectly vertical, because then his body mass would be off to one side and the combined center of mass would not be above the base. He would start to tip backwards. The ladder has to lean forward so the center of mass is above the contact point.
By mastering his body positioning and the timing of his steps, he's able to pull this off and make it to the top.
The surface the ladder on is quite squishy, which is good, so when he falls, it lessens his impact. It also means there's more friction between the ladder and the ground, and so it's a lot less likely to slip out from under him.
And of course, this takes a whole ladder skill, so you definitely shouldn't try this at home.
And now, a giant hula hoop.
Thanks, Debbie, but that's my line.
Is he controlling the hula hoop, or is the hula hoop controlling him?
World record holder Yuya Yamada definitely has savage spinning skills, seen here with a 44-pound metal hoop 10 feet in diameter.
This is one clip you might want to watch on a loop.
Yes, this clip just gets better with repeat viewings. But how Yuya hula with such a massive hoop?
This hula hoop is so big, Yuya needs to employ a special technique to get started. He actually holds onto it and spins on the spot to provide enough turning force to get that hoop spinning.
Once the hoop starts to spin, it wants to keep on spinning and resists movement in any other direction, even gravity pushing it downward.
The massive size of the hoop helps with this, because the bigger the hoop, the more mass it has, and the more that mass is spread out over a bigger area.
This means that once it starts moving, the bigger hoop resists that downward movement even more.
If, in fact, he wasn't adding any energy to it, the hoop would just fall down.
What he's actually doing is timing his runs with the movement of the hoop, using them to add energy on each rotation and keep the hoop airborne. It looks like the hoop takes over and drags Yuya across the ground. Now, it looks real, but it's all part of the trick, and it's all down to Yuya's acting skills.
Despite getting a helping hand from physics, this is still a very heavy hoop and a very impressive stunt.
Get ready, because our next clip is a sky-high world record attempt. No, it's not for the most fist bumps and high fives in a confined space. This is the most skydivers ever in a 3-formation jump. And before you start counting, there's 217 of them.
217 skydivers! That's amazing.
This is not only impressive, but also quite beautiful.
And these are some amazing formations. I bet it takes a lot of coordination.
Stunning symmetry and savage skills land them safely into the record books. We caught up with Patrick Pass, one of the men behind this mind-blowing stunt.
When we go for this kind of goal, there is always a doubt. We are never sure that we're going to reach the goal. And this is the fun part. This is a big challenge. Everybody has to do the perfect job. If not, no record.
How do these skilled skydivers create such amazing aerial formations?
Even though they make it look easy, forming these arrangements is a lot more difficult than it appears. They all have to be traveling at the same vertical speed to be able to link up with each other.
To steer themselves through the air and join everyone else, they use a technique called tracking.
If a skydiver lowers their right arm and raises their left, they're now deflecting more air to the left, which will push them right, and they can reverse this process if they want to steer left.
They can also speed up or slow down the rate that they're falling. If they expose more of their body to the uprushing air, they have a greater resistance and this slows them down. Or they can angle themselves such that there's less resistance and they'll fall faster.
This allows them to steer through the air and meet up in the middle to make these incredible formations.
So what's next for Patrick and his aerial record breakers?
It's always possible to go bigger and bigger. Of course, it's more difficult because we need more people, more aircraft, more altitude, more this and that. But it's part of the game. We don't know the limit yet.
And now, planting our feet firmly on the ground, we head to Texas. The Invisible Box Challenge is the latest viral phenomenon to hit the internet. But stepping up with over 17 million hits are these incredible cheerleaders.
What? Did she just do that?
That's incredible.
These cheerleaders are really thinking on top of the box.
So how is the illusion created?
You start with one foot on the invisible box and the other foot firmly planted on the ground.
Everybody's watching the foot on the invisible box, but the real trick happens with the foot that starts on the ground.
All the work is done by the back leg that has to push off the ground while the other leg remains suspended in the air. The brain must constantly adjust the angles of the knee and the ankle in order to make the foot stay stationary.
Skilled athletes are better at this kind of move because they have high levels of proprioception. That's an understanding of how your body is moving in three-dimensional space. But they're also very strong and fit, so they can coordinate the kind of explosive movement required to pull this off.
That is impressive.
In the name of science, I'll now illustrate the Invisible Box Challenge. It's a lot harder than it looks.
Oh wait, sorry Hakeem, we didn't get around to finishing this shot.
That's right.
You know what? Nobody tell him. Here we see what happens when physics meets physique.
This dude is strong.
Now this is great teamwork.
Could I get this guy to help me move house?
An incredible feat of strength from just one man. But how is this human Hulk able to hold up to 10 people?
This man is holding the weight of 10 grown adults for an impressive 8 seconds. The combined weight of that group is 1,370 pounds or 620 kilograms. That's about the weight of a polar bear.
As long as his friends climb on in pairs simultaneously, he doesn't have to use his muscles to keep himself upright. Most of the weight goes onto his shoulders, where it's transferred through his spine and the rest of his skeleton down to the ground.
The spine is a column of alternating bones called vertebrae and fibrous discs in between.
These discs cushion the downward forces and distribute the weight onto the next vertebra underneath them.
The vertebrae themselves are designed to take these kind of heavy loads. They have a relatively spongy kind of bone inside, and they can absorb shocks and dissipate these kind of compressive forces.
But these tactics can only take him so far. He needs to be incredibly strong, and you can see in the video the size of his muscles.
Welcome back to Savage Skill. Soaring into third place, prepare to take a deep breath. Former Navy SEAL Andy Stumpf is attempting the world's longest wingsuit flight. At 3 times the height of an average skydive, Andy is jumping from a terrifying altitude of almost 37,000 feet.
He's jumping from about the height commercial airliners cruise. Imagine looking out the window and seeing this guy.
This is really scary.
There's wingsuit clips, and then there's Andy. That's amazing.
Traveling a distance of 18.26 miles, Andy smashes the current record. But jumping from such a great height, how is he able to cope with the extreme conditions?
At this height, Andy would only be breathing in about a quarter of the amount of oxygen as usual, and so he begins the jump with a breathing apparatus to provide him with extra.
The lower pressure actually means a lower temperature. When Andy gets off the plane, the temperature around him is minus 54 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 48 degrees Celsius.
But by the time he reaches the ground, it's 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 38 degrees Celsius. What a change.
So how is Andy able to fly such a long distance?
Andy wants to maximize his glide ratio, which is the ratio of how far he travels horizontally versus how far he falls vertically. By flattening his body and holding a rigid shape, he can maximize his lift and travel as far as possible.
He keeps his body perfectly rigid for over 7 minutes, which is both physically and mentally demanding. Astounding.
Friend of the show, Lars Anderson, is an expert archer with serious savage skills. Just don't bother him when he's having a drink or down at the roller disco. But with over 5 million views, this sharpshooter is back with a trick shot that bends arrows.
Okay, don't make this guy mad.
He's like Robin Hood, but for the internet generation.
And it doesn't stop there. Lars is able to bend his arrows around some very brave people.
Why in the world have I never seen this before?
How is Lars able to angle his arrows to hit a target?
There is no room for error. Getting this right requires exactly the correct technique.
Normally, when an arrow flies, it's the tip that cuts through the air, and it's the tail feathers that keep it in a straight line. If the arrow veers off slightly to the left, the drag on the right side of the tail feathers will increase and pull that arrow back into a straight line.
To make the arrows curve in the air, Lars notches an arrow on the string so it's off-center. The next thing Lars does is he tilts the bow to one side.
When he releases the bowstring, the unusual placement of the arrow means it flies forward, but pointed off to one side.
As the arrow travels towards the target, air molecules hit those tail feathers, creating drag. Because of the angle, the drag is greater on one side than the other. So the arrow tries to even out those forces. It rotates in the air to create a straighter flight path.
The sideways movement of the tail of the arrow ends up pointing the arrow towards the target. And now the arrow will continue to fly in that direction because that's the direction that minimizes the drag.
And so, the arrow has curved in mid-air to hit the target.
It's really impressive, but really dangerous. Don't try this at home.
We've seen our savage skilled trendsetters reaching new levels of awesomeness, all in the name of science. But taking pole position, we're heading to South Carolina for our #1 clip. Professional racer and instructor Johann Swartz is attempting to break a world record for the longest ever vehicle drift within 8 hours.
This clip has to be #1 because these guys are showing some savage skills.
Covering the same distance from New York City to Washington, D.C., Johann and his team double the previous world drifting record.
It looks like a movie stunt, but it's real.
This is making me dizzy.
Nearly 20 million online viewers have been blown away by this outstanding oversteer.
This is amazing, if you get my drift.
We went to meet the team behind this tire-burning feat of endurance.
It all started in 2013 when I came up with the idea of beating the longest drift record.
Then it started becoming reality as we discussed, hey, can this actually happen, or is this just a bunch of guys talking? So we went down the road of actually trying to come up with a way to do it.
How does Johann drift a car for 8 hours?
To put a car into a drift, they approach a turn at speed. Just before the turn, they put on the brakes, which causes the mass of the car to shift to the front tires, so that when they turn, the front tires grip and the back tires slip, causing the car to drift.
Once they're in the drift, the driver will turn the steering wheel in the opposite direction and lock the car, and then it becomes a balancing act between the accelerator and the steering wheel.
They need to keep their speed up, but if they go too fast, they run the risk of spinning out.
And spinning out isn't the only concern.
To keep drifting for 8 hours requires more than 1 full tank of fuel. So that means they need a trick.
And that trick turned out to be a totally savage idea, refueling the car mid-drift.
To do this, both cars have been modified. The refueling car's back seat has been fitted with a huge tank of fuel and a pump connected to a nozzle. And the drift car has been fitted with a receiver that allows the nozzle to be easily attached and detached. And this whole system has been derived from the same one they use on fighter jets.
But unlike a fighter jet, the cars needed some helping hands. Cue Matt.
The scariest part, I guess, is that
I wanted to be in it.
I definitely felt a little bit of the pressure as far as being the refuel person. I just had to be aware of the danger involved and then what I needed to do ultimately to make the successful refuels.
Drifting 2 cars right next to each other and transferring fuel, this is nuts.
Not only did they break 1 world record, they also smashed another for the longest twin vehicle drift.
One of the first books I got was the Guinness Book of World Record, and ever since I started reading it, I wanted to be in it.
2 world records? This clip has to be #1.
Take a victory lap, guys. You've earned our trophy for being #1 in savage skills.
Thanks for making us #1!
And as they drift away into the distance, it's time to say goodbye until next time.